Dave Schoner, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
I am fantastic. So, you and I are the only people watching right now who know how we know each other. So, I'm going to give a little backstory.
You should, because it's been quite a while.
Yes. So, I am a successful lawyer and a failed screenwriter, or at least I'm not done yet. But
That's
I
good.
wrote my first and only screenplay in 1998. You are a film producer. We'll learn all about you, but you've produced films. You're the head of the New Jersey Film Commission, and you were helping me try to put it together, try to promote it, and that was probably in '99 or 2000, right?
Yep, that's correct. Yes.
And
Yeah.
then you got my former brother-in-law, Michael. He interned for your movie you did.
He did. Yes, he did. He was a big help.
He was, and you and I have stayed in touch over the years. Then we sort of like we're semi-Facebook buddies, and then that sort of like I don't know what happened. I think I changed my account or something, and then we both resurfaced, or I resurfaced, and we're Facebook buddies again. And I know you have a really cool project you're working on, and I thought, why don't you do Guitar Tales?
That sounds great.
But you did my show when it was a legal show, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, we talked about filmmaking legalities, what you should look for, not look for, all that stuff along that process.
Right. And how did you just become a member of the New Jersey Film Commission at that point?
Well, I had just become, yes, because I had actually interned at the Film Commission my first semester of my senior year. And then in my second semester, I went back to school. And that summer, I went in for an interview and got hired.
Yeah, I remember that, and that was and is a big deal. And you're still with the Film Commission, right?
It's 37 years later. I am still with the Film Commission and going strong. And now I'm actually the associate director.
Wow, that's fantastic. And why don't you do this? Because the first thing that pops in my head, of course, is The Sopranos. But I know from our interview, and I believe we were on Wayne's World Cable Access back then, weren't we?
Yes, we were. Yes.
It was like a two-camera fixed shoot, and it was analog. I remember that.
Yes.
And we were live on AM 1300, which was a wonderful station. But I remember we went through that, and you helped sensitize me to how incredible New Jersey is as a film location. And I want to revisit that a little bit because a lot has happened since then. But talk a little bit about that.
So, well, the wonderful thing that's happened in the last 18 months is Governor Murphy, who I work for. Governor Murphy has passed a film and TV tax incentive. And it's an incentive that incentivizes film companies to come to New Jersey, film in New Jersey, spend money in New Jersey. And that is exactly what is the biggest attraction for film companies in the States and foreign locations. They only go where there is a tax incentive. And now that we have a tax incentive, we are busting at the seams, and we're pretty much busting at the seams. Obviously, with the age of COVID, things have died down for a period of time, but we're seeing this very strong resurgence right now.
That's pretty cool. And I'm thinking like in the back of my head, so we have The Sopranos was filmed mainly here, right?
Yeah, so the TV series The Sopranos filmed a bulk of the on-location stuff here. Their studio stuff was done in Silver Cup in New York, but we also have the prequel feature film version of The Sopranos that also filmed here for 10 days. So we are connected to The Sopranos.
That's great. And then if you go way back, wasn't Marlon Brando on the waterfront? Wasn't it filmed in Hoboken?
Absolutely. The whole film was filmed in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Yep. And there's a million movies in between that were filmed here. I mean, there's something really special about New Jersey. And, there's locations, there's great proximity to New York City for actors, producers. I would imagine you probably have a lot of great technical help at your disposal in New Jersey too, right?
New Jersey has everything, and I always say the big highlight is we're cheaper. So, and the biggest thing is we offer cooperation, unparalleled cooperation. And I just don't say that. Whether you are a student filmmaker, a filmmaker making an educational film, or you're a big budget movie like The Joker, everyone gets the exact same level of cooperation because it's all about staying here, spending money here. And with the small filmmakers, when they become bigger filmmakers, we want them to think of New Jersey first.
Oh, that's a great idea. And I know that in addition to your position there, you've had a number of projects on your own. I know you mailed one to my house here. It was really cool. So remind me again, the movie that you did so many years ago, what was that?
So there's actually two. I don't know if you know about the second one. So the first one I did is a movie called Murder Reincarnated, which is about this police detective who figures out that the woman that he's dating is actually the reincarnated person of a young woman that he saw die early on. And then the other one I did was a movie called A Dangerous Place. And so I don't know. I have a feeling it was Murder Reincarnated. A
Yeah.
Dangerous Place was about 2012.
Yeah, that right. So that one I don't know, but this, yeah, the first one I remember. And so you've always stayed active because your passions always revolve around filmmaking. Whether you're doing it or
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I always use the term, and it's a big deal for me, is I have to stay creatively sane. And so we are all creative individuals, creative human beings. And so for me, a big deal is being able to have that creative outlet. There has to be that place that I can go. And so it's been a lot of fun, and it also gives me the outlet.
That's great. It's interesting on Guitar Tales, and it's funny. Just tell me you play guitar, so that's the reason you're here. Just say it, even if it's not true. But
I do.
all right,
I'm as musically untalented as possible. Sorry.
that's all
I
right.
love music. I love music. There you
All
go.
right, so you like guitars. I have an
I
idea.
like guitars. I
You
love
can-
looking at guitars.
You can tell us you can see this guitar. That's
Yes,
close
I can
enough.
see.
All
It
right.
looks nice. It looks nice.
It's a nice guitar. It's a very nice guitar. So we had Alex Scooby on, and he's not the only one I got that reaction from because he's an artist. He's an actor, but actors are artists. And we talked about COVID, and he talked about staying sane exactly the way you did. He talked about, especially during COVID when we're kind of locked, not kind of, we are locked in,
Right.
the need for people with artistic sides to them to have an outlet, or their brains really get a little kablooey. I have a creative side, and I'm finding I'm taking incredible pride in things I cook these days, and I'll have some real successes. I have my epic failures, but it's a creative outlet. So for you, you're going to work for the Film Commission. You're going to help the creatives put their project together. You're going to scope the site. You're going to help them coordinate everything. But then on your own, I guess you have your own projects that keep your own personal creative juices flowing.
Exactly. And for me, it's very much about how do you create that story? What is that concept? What is that overall thing that you're trying to do? And in a story-wise, for me, it's also putting things together. I like putting people together, putting stories together, and facilitating something as it happens. That's a really big deal for me.
So it's really cool. So, and I love that you used the word story. So I was at many years ago, a good friend of mine, Carl Bettinger, one of the best trial lawyers in the country. He actually took acting classes to become a great trial lawyer, really, and he took a lot of psychology. And he talked about how the human brain is wired to receive a story. And if you say to me, guess what happened yesterday, I'll respond in a certain way. But if you say, let me tell you a story, suddenly I get receptive. And my brain is hardwired to process a story. And it's really cool. And if you have that ability and that inclination, it's just so satisfying to put a story together.
And a big thing when you talk about that is it's so much. And so when you're talking about a story or pitching a story or retelling a story or whatever it may be, watching the other person's eyes, how they react to it, you can see what's going on. You can see that you're connecting, and you can see that they're getting it and appreciating it.
Yeah, and that's a really wonderful thing. And putting a story together is no simple task. And I think back to my screenplay. I think I had an amazing idea, but in my execution, I know that my story wasn't quite there, and that's why it didn't get produced. And everyone thinks they have a screenplay or a book inside of them, but until you put, finger to keyboard, pen to paper, you don't know if you could truly put a story together.
Well, I'll tell you, I think the big thing is, and the key thing is that everyone has a story, everyone has an idea, and that's good, but it just exists in that little form. And I'm not minimizing that. I'm just saying it exists in that little form. The real deal where it hits the pavement, where, everything hits, is when you actually complete it, do it, write it, make it happen, whether it's in a written form or whether you even execute it further. Then there's something real to that. There's something tactile. And I think for me, it always has been, it separates you from everyone else. Each little phase separates you a little bit differently from everyone else if you can go past that initial, I just have an idea phase.
Now, are you a fan, what was it, the Screenwriter's Bible? I forgot the name of the guy who wrote it.
Oh, Sid Fields.
Sid Fields. So he's of the view, I've read that book 3 times, he's of the view it has to be in this formula. You have to have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. You got to be plus minus 120 pages, carry your 12 point, show it, don't say it, all this kind of stuff. Is he right? Is he sometimes wrong?
Well, I'm a big person of structure. And so I'm going to say that he's right. It may not be a literal sense because film language does change. And even the language of film is constantly changing. Alfred Hitchcock's movies, while they're classics and I love him, are viewed very differently today because the language of film has changed. But there is a certain thing that he really drives home about structure. Certain things happen at a certain point, how you bring something in. And also the human brain, and as movie-going audiences, we kind of know when something's working and not working.
Right.
We also get a sense like, okay, this is like a half an hour too long, because that's just how we are. We're trained for it. It's our way our brains function. It's what we're used to.
Right. And so on your let's talk about your movie creating part of yours. You're not the writer. You're the producer in those scenarios, right?
Yes. Typically what happens is I'll come up with an idea, a concept. You do what's called a mini deck where you lay everything out, what you're looking to do and accomplish.
And hold on. I never heard of that. I thought I knew all the terms. Tell us about a mini deck.
So sometimes they call it a mini Bible or a mini deck. And so what it is it is a layout of, let's just say a TV series for right now. So when you talk a mini Bible, mini deck, you're laying out the episodes of the TV series, what's going on. Not scripts, but you're laying out episode 1, this is what happens. Episode 2, this is what happens. And when you're presenting it to someone, they can see what your vision is. They can kind of see how the show arcs, how it proceeds, what processes. And so you get all those things involved in there. And that's what I'll more or less do. I will do that very detailedly and then try to find a writer who kind of matches the tonality of what I'm trying to accomplish, or try to find someone who brings something a little different to it. So one of the things, and I'm going to dance off for a minute, one of the things is this kids TV series that we shot the pilot for. And I've been working with a writer who is astutely funny, has a great sense of humor, loves comedy, and we're creating a TV show about tweens. And so I kind of sat down with him, talked to him about it, and we went back and forth and developed it. And he wrote the screenplay based on what we had kind of laid out. And so that's what I enjoy, getting something together and then getting a writer on board to actually execute it.
And it's interesting because those are, they can be overlapping skill sets. I know with me they're not. I think what you have to some extent is the idea, the concept. I know I struggled on the execution side of putting it all together. And what you described, is that a different animal than a treatment? Because a treatment's the only term I know that's pre-screenplay.
Well, you could do a treatment to a TV series and a treatment to a screenplay if you want. Typically, mini decks or mini Bibles are stuff that's made for TV. And the only reason I reference that is because for me right now, I think opportunities and where things are at are TV. There's so much outlets. There's so many outlets out there right now for having what you're doing. And also these outlets are very segmented. You can go something very specific. So that I typically just would do a mini deck. But I guess if it was a feature film, I would probably type out it as a treatment and then present that to the writer. Yes.
And then a mini deck, it sounds like there's a little more detail to it than
there is.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. You're going to have your bio in it. You're going to have the other bios in it. You have maybe you envision who the cast is.
Right.
Maybe not. You have demographics. You're going to also have, it's going to be chock full of information that someone can see that they can immediately go to and say, oh, okay, this kind of answers all the questions in this little short, compact book.
So tell us, it's a good segue you've given us. Talk to us about your pilot and what it's about and what you're hoping to do with it.
So the pilot is about a teenager. Sorry, not well, I call him a teenager. I guess he's a tween. So that's really, it's more of a tween. So imagine you're a tween in middle school, and a lot of tweens, when their parents can't pick them up after work, they actually go to aftercare. So this tween goes to aftercare every day with his best friends. He forgets his book one day in one of the classrooms, goes back to the classroom to get the book. When he gets the book, the smart board or smart TV turns on, and his future self 40 years into the future is on the smart board. And he starts talking to it, and the future self tells the present self that you need to change stuff in the present because your best friends aren't in the future. And so that seems like it's a very heavy thing, but it's actually not. It's made for tweens. There's fart jokes, comedy, and it really is about how you alter things in the present, and it ricochets everything down the line. Because we get a lot of times where we say stuff, well, I wish I could change that. I wish I could change that. And you don't realize when you change something, it's going to alter everything else down the line. And so it's subtly infused in there, but it's really a comedy. It's made for tweens. It's a show that's serialized, which means every episode, it's a sitcom that's serialized. So every episode equals up to a conclusion at the end of the season. So it's not something like a standalone sitcom where you get a lot of like Henry Danger, iCarly, where they're freestanding episodes. This all adds up to a conclusion.
That's fantastic. It's funny. I was thinking, if I was sitting around with a bunch of venture capitalists, as soon as you talked about the smart board, I'd say, sold. Like that. And it's funny. I told you right before we hit the record button, I do want to try my hand at another screenplay, and it's 5 Lunches. I've had the title for 18 years. And it's got a little piece of sort of a time jump. And yours I like better because it leaves open so many possibilities.
Right.
But it's a great vehicle for the older, we hope wiser self to sort of guide. I
would agree. It's a really big deal. It's very important. And also I wanted to create something that when you watch the characters, you become attached to the characters, because a lot of sitcoms, we get it. There's an emotionalness in there, but you're really not attached to the characters. You really don't, aren't totally, completely passionate about them. So I wanted you to be attached to these comedy characters in a way that's walking that line, that tween line, because obviously it's made for 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, which is very specific.
But the nice thing, just like, I will admit I like SpongeBob, fine. I love
SpongeBob. I think it's great.
Me too. Family Guy I love. And I could see with that vehicle, I could see the parents enjoying the screen while the tween who's watching it will appreciate the recipient of the wisdom, even if the recipient is resistant to the wisdom.
Exactly. And it has that, and it's just about how kids function and something that they can really follow and get attached to.
So let's talk business a little bit. So is the pilot taped already? Is it done?
Yep, we filmed the pilot approximately 2 years ago, and we're making the film festival rounds now. We did it more as a web-based series at the moment. So we're making the film festival series rounds as WebFest, and we are actually in 5. We've been in 2 already. We have 3 coming up, film festivals, and so it's been very exciting to have the recognition come for the pilot. There's a lot of people that worked on it, gave their blood, sweat, and tears, and were so supportive. The cast was amazing. The crew was amazing. And so I'm happy for them, because to have that recognition on that film festival level it's a justification that all the hard work paid off.
That's fantastic. And let's talk about a home run for Dave Schoner. What, not just if it happens, but what does it look like? How would it form if it does happen? In other words, tell us.
No. So the perfect form would be Netflix calls me up and tells me that they want to put it into series, and the first season would be 8 episodes. I would come on as a showrunner, and we would start filming it in New Jersey, because New Jersey has a very aggressive tax incentive. And we know the business side of this business is you go where there's money.
Right. So that's the answer. So you're going to the film festivals, and now these days virtually, I would think, to the film
It's
festivals.
all virtually, yes.
And then I would imagine Netflix has access to these, or they'll have reps who can potentially say, all right, I want to check out the Hoboken I'm making that up, but the Hoboken Film Festival. And your hope is that whether it's Netflix, Hulu, I think HBO is still around.
It could be Disney Plus. It
Right.
could be there's so many possible outlets. Nickelodeon. There's Freeform. There's so many different possible outlets for it, and that's the wonderful thing. Why I talk about content, and you talk about this TV type of content, because there are so many outlets right now, and it's
Right.
not that everyone produces necessarily serialized content or a series, but there's just so many places it can go that are unparalleled to what we had when you were writing years ago.
Yeah, we had a little bit of cable and three network channels, or you were in
Exactly.
movies. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And the name of your production company?
So I call it, obviously, because you're looking at it, it's the Great Mustachio Filmworks.
Yeah.
And
You screwed up my softball. You were supposed. I wanted you to answer it straight face, and I was like, "I would be straight face." How did you come up with that name? But
no,
it's cool.
a dear friend was busting me one day. So I've had this handlebar for about, I'd say, 7 years now. And I remember we were working out in the gym one day and we were talking about it. And a friend said, this is what you should call it. And originally I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, no, it's actually become part of my identity, who I am. And and I'm not good as a straight man. So if you're going to do this comedy thing, let me do the comedy. You be the straight guy.
I'm not even funny, so I don't know if I could pull it off. That's a
so
good
then I have to be
example of it.
comedy, and you're the straight guy.
Yeah, I'll be the straight man. But so that's great. So you've got this production company. You have that. You have the two films under your belt, and then so now that taping took place 2 years ago. It's in the can, as they say,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So since then, have there been any other projects where you've had non-virtual type things?
So it's only been not since that. No, right now I've worked on that, and I have a bunch of other story ideas, which we talked about this already. I have a bunch of ideas that I want to put to fruition, and I'm actually working with two separate writers right now on executing those ideas. They're not there yet, but
Right.
I'm hopeful by the end of September, maybe or October, that the idea will actually be written down. It'll be something that you can actually work on.
So where do you find writers? I would imagine you're incredibly networked these days.
Yeah, it is incredibly networked. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I'm constantly on LinkedIn. Also, I'm on, and I don't mean it in a social sense, because Facebook has got pages. There's a lot of social media platforms that you can connect with people, and so on them you have to be careful, because a lot of times the platform is just a more of a social platform than a business platform. And the key, I think, no matter where you find your writer, I would give anyone, is you really have to read the bulk of their work and to make sure that it fits what your vision is, especially if you're coming from a producer. Does their tone, their execution of how they write something, does it fit how you envision something? Because it has to be this marriage, because you're going to be in it for quite some time.
Yeah, and it's funny because like you have you like to follow the Sid Field formula. I mean, I think that's a fair characterization.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So if you want to look at John Doe's body of work, and you see that John Doe likes to work way outside of the box, that's not a good fit for you.
Probably not. No, unless the material that was going to be working on would be that out of the box, but it probably wouldn't be. No, I'm very, very big on structure and certain things happening on certain pages, and really a screenplay shouldn't be over 120 pages. I may get killed for that, but I think it's too much if it is.
Right, and I think there's always going to be an exception that reaches either a lot or some modicum of success. But I know when I read Sid Field's book and a bunch of others, they would take any movie and they would say, this is how and why it fit the formula. Every movie you've ever watched and enjoyed fits the Sid Field formula, with this small handful of exceptions out there.
Yes. Well, there's I know I'm saying I know you'll agree. There's always an exception to every rule.
Right. But it doesn't invalidate the rule.
No, not at all.
Totally, but it's been 2 decades since I read those books. But I read 10. I slowly, carefully read maybe 10 screenplay books. But I know that the Sid Field book is the book. You know.
It really is. And when I talk to young screenwriters or talk to people that are doing some sort of class or taking classes or something like that, I always tell them you should read it. It should be part of when you're advancing and learning. It should be part of what you gather to make it work.
Yeah, I know that when I first started getting into this, a buddy of mine who's going through exactly what you did, he's got a sizzle reel that's generating some interest, and he had sent me many years ago the screenplay for Fargo.
Oh, wow.
What an amazing read. You could just see the genius in that movie.
Yes, which is the whole point. Yes.
Yeah, and I also remember, now that I think about it, I read Austin Powers. The
Wow.
original Austin Powers screenplay. And I still remember to this day, I was laughing my ass off, even though I'd already seen the movie by the time I read it. The scene where there's a car going over a hill, and it inexplicably blows up, but it shouldn't. or else the person blows up. But just the genius of the comedy. But,
Right.
but I know that an important piece of it is that when you get a regular writer trying to approach this medium, there's too much what they call exposition.
Yes, exactly. And screenplays are a very particular type of format and read. And I try to tell people who have never read a screenplay before, you're going to need to process how a screenplay is written, because it's not written like a short story, a novel, a magazine, or anything you've ever read. It's a very different type of process.
Is it still the case that if you're not doing 12-point Courier font, you're screwed?
Nothing's changed, my friend.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Nothing's changed.
so I will share this. It's a funny but bad story. So an old paralegal of mine, her uncle was the producer of that great movie Traffic.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very big deal. She got me a read. And I've never admitted this publicly except privately with friends. So I managed to get a read of my screenplay, the one I sent you so many years ago. So he wrote a coverage for it. He personally wrote coverage. That's a big deal to get that kind of...
That is a big deal to get that type of attention, to have someone take the time out of their crazy busy day, because if you're really in the business. I mean, I'm in it, but that man is really in the business.
So when he reads my screenplay, and I excitedly get the coverage, because there's no email, I get paper back then, right? Mm-hmm. So this big time, not just big time, huge time Hollywood guy took the time to read my screenplay, and my favorite line from coverage, and coverage, as you know, but other people might not, it's like a book report.
That's right.
The screenplay, and it'll end with either, what is it, pass, consider, and what's the other one? Go or something?
Yeah, where you're going to get a green light, or depending on what it is. Yes.
Right, because there was that show Greenlight that was out for a while. So my favorite line in the coverage report was the following: "The dialogue is so bad, it often leads to unintended laughter." Okay. And I was so thankful I had a day job when I read that. But it was like getting kicked with a steel-tipped boot in my gut when I heard that. But he was right,
And this business is a tough business, and it's not for the faint of heart. So you have to be able to take criticism, whether it's right or wrong, because everyone has an opinion. But it's definitely not for the faint of heart.
No. There's you put your soul into something, and look, I was very fortunate. It was my first shot at it. I had no training, and I had a day job. I was a trial lawyer. But so when you read stuff from your screenwriters, do you ever find yourself in sort of creative battles with them where they don't, they're very married to something, whether it's a style or a scene?
I would probably not use the word battle, and I understand why you say that. I really haven't had that opportunity. We've gotten to discussions about stuff and worked stuff out.
Fists discussion.
Well, this is like it's not how I envision something, or not how I do it, and we'll go back and forth and have a heavy discussion of it. And sometimes it takes more time to work through what it is that you're trying to convey if the screenwriter is not feeling it or doesn't get it. And that's why you'll see a lot of successful screenplays, depending on who's writing it. You'll sometimes see multiple screenwriters on it, because there's a point sometimes where you just have to bring somebody else on to try to carry the vision out. Right.
Or sort of get the vision of the screenwriter more in line with that which might be commercially palatable.
Exactly. And it depends. Once again, if you've done a lot of your research, you'll have a good idea of what someone is like, what their general tonality is like, and what they envision. So the young man that I'm working with now, he's fantastic because he really likes that comic. That's his thing. His thing is comedy. His thing is, I don't mean slapstick in a traditional sense, but he likes that comedy. And so I probably, I've talked to him about more of a serious screenplays or something. And so he'll often admit, well, no, this is really not where my strength is.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I understand that. And then you move on.
And I think the hardest thing, which is probably not that hard for a screenwriter, is to put you have the story, which we talked about a little bit before, but then getting the right words to come out of the characters' mouths, to really find the essence of a character's personality and think, how would they express, or what words would they use? And of course, in screenplays, you're going to have, he slouched and said, or something like that. So you're going to have at least, and you don't want to tread too deeply into the director's province, right? But there has to be at least a little bit of that, type cut to, Billy's face as he tearfully says, something like that.
Yes.
But grab those correct words. And again, I from my one experience at that, I know that it's really hard. And if you don't do it right, it comes across as sort of contrived or hokey or formulaic. But to get real genuine organic expression of feelings and words out of a character's mouth is no easy task. I mean, you and I are doing it right now, but to put it on paper,
it's very, very, very different because you want to capture how the syntax, the inflection, the way a person talks. And a lot of times we would do something that you typically wouldn't have in a screenplay. Well, hi, David. How are you? Well, I'm doing very well, David. We're doing well. Good. How, you don't necessarily always do that in a screenplay because it's like, it's boring and it's not interesting. So there is definitely a system. I think if you're writing a screenplay, your biggest goal obviously is to satisfy all that stuff, but you're writing a screenplay for it to be read. And that seems like a very ridiculous statement to make, but you want something to literally be the term a page turner. You want to have that screenplay where they are flying through, the reader is flying through your screenplay, because that is going to get you to the next stage. Right.
I remember I read, for some reason the word 11 or the number 11 stands out for me, that the first 11 pages are those critical pages. If you haven't grabbed someone by those first 11 pages, you're done. There's pass.
That's right. People that's going to start. They want to. You have to grab them in that time frame, that very short time frame. And if you grab them, they will stay with the screenplay and continue reading.
And then if you think of, I wish I could think of an example right now, but when you think of the best movies, right, you get that unbelievable scene where you're drawn in to the story, right? I shouldn't have put air quotes around it because it is a story. By minute one, you're fully drawn in, Rocky 1, the very first Rocky, what an amazing Hollywood Philly-based story, the way he did that.
Yeah.
But you're drawn in right away.
You're completely drawn in, and that's what you have to do, because you have to remember, when we're watching it on the screen, you want to keep the audience. You want to get them in and have them stay with the show, whether it's a feature film or whether it's a TV series. You want to have them stay with it. And so that's why it's so key in those first 10 pages, really, to make that impact and have it stand up.
Right, and it's a minute a page. That's what a screenplay
exactly is. Yes, that's the general guideline. Yes.
So. I want to segue a little bit, and what I love about our show is that the time flies. I feel like I've been chatting with you for 3 minutes, and we're already probably at a good half hour, which is.
Yes.
And so I know you're working on a wonderful project right now, Cedar Grove Waves, I believe it's called.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about that a few minutes, because here we are. Our taping right now is August 26th. We'll see how quickly it airs, but talk about that project.
So Cedar Grove Waves is where the students at Cedar Grove High School put 2,977 flags representing everyone that was killed on 9/11 on the front lawn of the high school. In addition to the flags, they stick a name marker in front of each flag that represents each victim and who that person was. Their name is on it. Behind it is the country of origin of that person. So approximately 372 people were foreign nationals. And so if you were a foreign national that was killed on 9/11, your country's flag would be behind your name marker.
That's beautiful.
And yeah, it's pretty impactful. And it came out of, I have a little backstory, but it came out of the knowledge that young people were too young to remember it and really don't appreciate what's going on. When you were talking to me about Pearl Harbor, I really don't have a full concept of Pearl Harbor and what it meant.
Right.
And so the idea came for me is that let's do something that's a very visual effect that you really causes a conversation and makes people stop and stare. Now, to be fair, it was I would say now it's 6 years. So I would say about 10 years ago, I was in California on a business trip. We were with a car full of people. We were going up to a meeting. We were driving up the Pacific Coast Highway. As we're driving up, we're going up the Pacific Coast Highway. Pepperdine University is off to the right.
Been there many times. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And there were flags, these massive flags all over Pepperdine University.
Oh, all right.
And I was like, something's going on there. So we have to stop on the way back. And it was in September. And so on the way back, we parked at Pepperdine. We got out of the car, and we found out that Pepperdine University, they just put the 2,977 flags on the front lawn of Pepperdine.
And it's a beautiful sloping lawn.
It overlooks the Pacific Ocean. It's green. It's majestic. It's massive. And the flags they put up are massive flags, full-length flags with metal bars, and they're spread apart so you can literally walking through a sea of flags. And that stayed with me. It would never go away. And so like 3 years later, I was like, I wonder if we could do something like that here in Cedar Grove at Cedar Grove High School. But the challenge is that obviously you want to do something that's dignified and respectful, and at the same time being cost conscious and being very responsible financially. Because if you're going to spend a fortune, I'd rather have students have it than, you want to have something that's there. It has to check all those boxes in not a very typical way, but a responsible way. And so what we do at Cedar Grove High School and in Cedar Grove is we get their flags that are 18-inch tall, they're wooden flag, and the flag is actually 12 inches long. And so we have this whole process where we put those flags out. So they're like knee high. And the effect is definitely there, and the effect is, it's impactful. The one thing that happens every year, this is going to be our 6th year, the one thing that happens is obviously they're wooden flags, and they accidentally break, they get old, the elements attack them. It's all those typical things. So we have to fundraise every year through GoFundMe to get new flags every year.
Right.
One of the things I've tried to do every year is how do we switch it up every year? And how do you switch it up to make sure that it stays dignified? Because there's always this possibility that you'll walk away from the dignity. It has to be something that's, serious and dignified. So the first year we just put flags in the ground. There was no markers. The following year we put markers in the ground next to each person. And so each year we did something that was different. In year 4, we actually were very fortunate enough through a father in town who actually had friends and coworkers that died in 9/11. We actually appealed to the Port Authority and now have a piece of 9/11 steel actually in a monument on the high school property.
I saw that on the YouTube thing you sent me. That's amazing. Really amazing.
It's so impactful that it does what it's supposed to do. It's all about causing this conversation. It's about young people that are 19 years old, 17, 18, 16, and they're going to talk about it when they see it. So that is it's just worked. This year, we are going to fundraise to plant 2 trees on the front lawn of the high school for the 2 Cedar Grove residents that actually died that day.
That's a great idea.
It's just little things, keeping it dignified, honoring them, remembering them, and just educating young people.
So the parallel I'm finding here to sort of pull it all together is that you've got Dave Schoner doing something really nice, and you're tapping into your creative side
Yes.
every single year, finding a newfangled way to keep it dignified, fresh, and interesting and relevant to the children and the families. So every year you're tapping into your creative side to find just the slightest little different angle to keep it fresh and meaningful to everyone. I think that's great.
I think that's absolutely correct. And it's something that's always on my mind because you want to, once again, how can we change it up a little bit? And the biggest thing I always tell people is you don't want to do change for the sake of change.
Right.
Because if something's working, I don't mean getting stale, and that I'm not even implying that here, but if something's working, there's no reason not to stay with it.
Right.
So it's about how do we change it up a little bit every year to keep it fresh and to keep it keep that momentum going where people talk about it.
I love that idea.
Thank you.
I think we have to get you back another time because I could do 5 hours with you. But,
Well, yeah, I love talking. You love talking.
yeah, that's a good combination, right?
It is. Yes.
Yeah. So, and I would guesstimate the last time we did an interview together was probably 19, 20 years ago.
It solidly has to be. I can't. It has to be that long.
You know who? I just realized it was John McLaughlin who connected us. Right?
Yes, it was. Yes. John's doing well. He's
good.
doing well. I stay in touch with him occasionally. And the thing about it's been a long time since we've connected, and I always say this, and I don't because I don't function in the negative. I don't mean this as a negative.
Yeah.
Life gets in the way, and
Yeah.
so life gets in the way because there's a lot of different things going on, and sometimes it's more complicated, sometimes it's not. But the fact is, you make these human connections and you make these personal connections, and they wind up resurging or coming back, just like anything in a relationship.
No, it's very cool. It's very cool. And then you reconnect and it feels like it's been 10 minutes and not.
Absolutely. Yes, it does now.
Yeah.
Like I said, we would talk forever.
So this was fabulous. I know for the first and only time of our Zoom shows, we technically call them fireside chats. And the reason we call them that is the first promo I did was in front of my fireplace in my house until I realized I have no Wi-Fi there. So I lit a candle behind my desk a few times to pretend it was a Wi-Fi or a fireside show. Now I just call it that and it doesn't mean anything. Thank you so much, Dave Schoner. This is great.
You're welcome, my friend, and let's make sure we stay in touch.